Jesus says, and this is sort of the whole, that's why I want to pair these stories. I want to sort of introduce this journey by saying there's a physicality of this, that we're going to Jericho, and Jericho is going to have something, but he's telling a story, and then it's going to be acted out in some way on two different levels. And what he's trying to get his disciples to, which is ironic because both Zacchaeus and Bartimaeus can see clearly what the disciples can't. And Bartimaeus is healed not only of the physical blindness, he actually knows who Jesus is, can see him clearly for that. And Zacchaeus, who was blinded by his own self-righteousness and his own shame and his standing in the community, is seen as well. I mean, look at the difference between the two. Bartimaeus is the one who calls out and yells out, almost demands it, where everybody's trying to, oh gosh, be quiet. And we talked about this, Michelle and I always talk about this, is, you know, when people, sort of a community will help sort of figure out where you belong in the pecking order, and then it'll lock you in, because that's how you make sense of your world. And so when a blind man is now given sight, it doesn't make sense, and we don't understand this. So if a beggar now is the one who can see Jesus and the one who now is healed, then we don't know how the world works anymore, and we don't feel comfortable doing that. And you know what do we do when we don't feel comfortable about things? We get rid of the problem, okay? And that's with Jesus. So all this stuff is mirrored. So Jesus confronts. He doesn't just passively sit back and hope people are going to. He goes right into the heart of the city of Jerusalem and forces people. And he confronts them in a way that makes them uncomfortable. And when people feel uncomfortable, they tend to say, either I have to change or I need to get rid of him. And if I get rid of him, I don't have to do anything. Okay? So part of this is, Jesus says we need only 7 words. I don't want to oversimplify, but I'm also tired of overcomplicating religion. Okay? Because, boy, we can just go through all kinds of machinations, and here's what you got to do, and here's what you do, and this happens, and here's what you do. And I don't want to oversimplify, but there is, don't you feel this way at some point? The older you get, the more simple life gets. It's like it's really complicated when you're younger. You're trying to figure things out. It doesn't mean you got everything figured out. What you figured out is you don't have everything figured out. It's okay. And there's a simplicity. And you gravitate toward not a whole bunch of friends, but some really good friends. And you sort of gravitate toward good things in your life as opposed to dealing with all the other stuff that we always put up with or inadvertently went and invited into our lives. So here are the 7 words. Mumbled by the tax collector, stood at a distance and stared at the ground. God have mercy on me, a sinner. So what Jesus is beginning to say is, this is not a religion based on 614 laws and regulations. This is a movement of God to say the way in which you connect with God is to be completely aware of your own humility and dependence upon God, and to seek God in all things in ways that doesn't require you. And out of that, and that's where I think we get it backwards, is we think we have to live this incredibly perfect life in order for God to be pleased with us. What happens is we find out we don't live a perfect life. Then we experience grace, and the response is, I want to be the best person I can be from now on, God, because I know what grace is. I want to be a good person. I want to extend grace to others. I want to love others. I want to do what I should have always done, and to be the person you called and created me to be as well. Okay? After this, he said, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. So we're 17 miles away from Jerusalem. But this is important. And I think sometimes we just sort of jump to, Good Friday and all the things that happened, Palm Sunday, all that, and rightfully so. But this is the sort of the setup. And what Jesus is trying to say is something very, very important. Is this is how it's going to be defined. Those who are going to follow him are not so self-righteous. They're not the ones who are going to look at other people and say, "Thank God I'm not like those other people." They have a sense of awareness that we need a Savior. And we're the ones who need to be saved, not everybody else that we can point to that has all the problems. Okay? Got some other things, but I want to talk. Let's open it up. Do you have any questions, comments?
I like the coupling thing. I mean, I think it's fun and interesting when you figure those kind of things out. It just makes the Bible that much more intriguing.
So I was in a seminary class one time, and I guess I thought, when I write, I just write. And when I see things, and so we were sitting in something, we were studying Psalms, and I just thought they were just Psalms, beautiful. Somebody wrote down poetry, everything. I didn't realize the level of precise writing. So there's a thing called, parallelism and anti-parallelism, and I mean seriously. And so you'll see one line, and then it'll actually the second line will be an actual mirror, just worded slightly different than the first line. It's parallelism. And then anti-parallelism is you got one and the exact opposite next to it. And then there's one that's actually, and don't shoot me, I can't remember which one it is, but it's literally taking the alphabet, like not English, like A, B, C, D, and every line starts with a letter.
Is it a acrostic?
Yeah, it's acrostic, but it's, I can't remember I can't remember which psalm it is, but there's a couple of them. But then you start saying, these people literally were so diligent about every single word because they felt like this was the most holy, sacred thing they could do, to put down in words something that would express the majesty of God.
Yeah.
And so you read that, and so I'm like you, and then you start reading and you start saying coupling, and then you go, okay, I thought these were sort of uneducated folk. These are people who are steeped in the tradition to say everything is connected. And if you read it, and I think we've lost it because we just read it as this one story that has a lot of different stories in it. But if you start connecting it, he's trying to say to you, look at the contrast between these two. You got a rich man, you got a poor man. Okay? You got one who's blind and one who wants to actually see Jesus but can't. I mean, you just go back and forth, and it gets fascinating because you're going, what is he saying is, anybody can do this, but you got to come to the point of saying, God have mercy on me, I'm a sinner. Zacchaeus does it, Bartimaeus does it, and everybody else can do it. It widens the net of people that he's trying to reach, who think they never had access to God because all the Pharisees were telling them how bad they were and how badly they messed up. I love what you just said.
Yeah,
I think that's so important.
I love how you just see the parallels even between the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Yes.
Like somebody said to me, you look at, it's the 12 tribes of Israel and it's the 12 disciples.
Yes.
And you're like,
Boom.
I just didn't even get that, until somebody pointed it out.
It is. And even the loaves and fishes, it's like it represents the whole world, how many things they collect and what it means and all that stuff. It absolutely is.
Well, and this is kind of a different thought. It has to do with the walking. When they get up in the morning and they just walk. And there's a few times that they talk about when they're walking, but while you were talking, I thought, I wonder what they said when they walked about this. Because Jesus, they didn't have to worry about anything. They went somewhere, they slept, they ate, they got up, and they walked, and they were taking care of them on the way. And what those conversations must have been like, just waking and walking.
Tell me, and I don't want to put you on the spot, you just did a pilgrimage where you did a lot of walking in Spain, correct?
Yeah, and we would meet people on the way and we would talk, and a lot of the conversations centered around spiritual topics, and it was people from all over the world, all different faiths, but a lot of Christians, I guess probably 80%, but just that waking and walking. And one of the friends, they just happened to be Catholic, he reflected on that as well. And we were talking about really deep stuff, and it just kind of happened, and he was saying this is what this must have been like, and that part of Spain is very similar to that.
It is, very good.
And I know they have a rule there, or a law, that you had to help the people, the pilgrim. Yeah. And that's the same thing there. If you had this little passport proving that you were on the Camino, nobody could turn you away. And people had stories of hotels and being full, and maids would take people home with them because they had to do that. And so I was thinking about what that was like and what their conversations were, because we found ourselves talking about things we never would have talked about just because you're waking and you're walking.
I love it.
It was just, and that's what they were doing.
Yeah. And it ultimately is a pilgrimage, is what you were on.
Yeah.
It's not the destination, and it drives Americans
and we were
crazy.
very shallow. We were planning on food, wine, and culture, and
Yeah.
a physical challenge. Y'all know Russ and I, this was not on our list of things to do. It was a complete and total surprise.
So, and again, I don't want to put you on the spot. What was your takeaway? What did sort of God reveal to you, or what did you discover on your own about that? That was really most important. What you just shared, or?
Yeah, leaving things on the road, kind of like Paul, and I think maybe Simon. There were a lot of things. I have a really nasty temper, and I felt like I left most of that temper on the road. And I think many of you all know that we lost our dream home and our dream life, and we never really quit mourning that. And we left that on the road and didn't even realize we had until we started talking about things. And a lot of judgment of other faiths, and it's just leaving things on the road. And I wondered how much the apostles left on the road as they walked, because it really happened.
Oh, that's such a great insight. You can't get to Jerusalem and still carry all this stuff, particularly what happens.
It's a whole